Hey everybody, welcome back to the Lutheran Worship Podcast presented by the Center for Worship Leadership at Concordia University, Irvine. I'm Kip Fox, and I am joined by my co-host as always, the Reverend Steve Zank. We are super excited because a longtime friend and colleague of ours, Brendan Knorp, is joining us on the podcast today, and we're going to talk about guitar and playing guitar in worship. Brendan is the director for the worship arts at Concordia Lutheran Church in Kirkwood, Missouri, which Kirkwood is in the St. Louis area. And Brendan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really cool to get to hang with you guys online here, see you, and have a discussion about something I love.
Absolutely. So Brendan is awesome. He's a great composer. He's really just musically he's a smart guy. Okay, so he's got real musical abilities and talents and gifts.
Are you using the number system over there, Brendan?
Brendan's using notes on staffs and stuff like that. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Oh, yeah, beyond that. Okay. Yeah,
it's crazy. So Brendan, just as we start here, can you run down for us as director for the worship arts, which "for" is an interesting word there, director for the worship arts. What is kind of an outline of your responsibilities there?
All right. Good catch on the "for the worship arts." That was an interesting distinction when I took the call to come here. And the idea behind the job description was that it implies that I don't have to be the one doing all of the worship arts. Right. So, and there are many components of the job where I'm, in truly just a director managerial role, and that's actually a good thing. So that's kind of interesting distinction about the job, that it wasn't going to be like you are the worship leader and this is what you're doing. But besides doing literally everything at the church, I am tasked with leading a weekly worship meeting with our pastors, the rest of our music ministry team, some of our support staff, production people. So I'm the guy that's responsible for getting it all in alignment and, making sure that themes and all those things that we want to do are accomplished and realized. I do specifically worship planning for our modern worship services. We've got 2 worship spaces at Concordia. So we have a director who's in the organ traditional area, and I lead the more contemporary area. And that's just by being flexible with where my skills are most needed right now. Not a reflection that I don't love also doing music over there too. So I'm in charge of picking out music for that, recruiting a band, singers, all that business that comes with it, right? Arranging, getting charts set, and just making sure that, everything flows together for the week. Awesome. I think it's pretty typical, probably, for worship arts directors.
It sounds like pretty in line with a lot of folks listening, probably right now. So, I had sort of intimated this earlier, but I see you as a musically educated man, and it's sort of ironic for us because Brendan here creates and helps us put out all of our what's called Chord Pro charts for our TSI songs, which are like the chord and lyric charts that often align with your CCLI song select charts. And it's a whole science behind it. But I think it's funny because I know that we'll talk about your schooling here in a second. You went to a lot of school for music, and yet you're also rocking the word with chords over the top charts for us. So I love that. I love that juxtaposition. But tell us about your background in music.
Yeah. One thing about those charts real quick is that when I'm working in rehearsal, I'm usually working from a lead sheet or have that and a rhythm chart open on a music stand. But sometimes on an iPad that requires going back a page for a repeat. So once everything sounds really good, I switch over to those chord charts because I can just read it from beginning to end. And I don't need to worry at that point, we've got it covered. So I find those chord charts actually super handy in a practical sense. So what was your first question?
Oh, yeah. So tell us about your music education. We'll get into kind of how you started, but just kind of, you know.
So I went to Concordia University in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I studied music major and Spanish minor of all things, and secondary education. So I knew when I got out of high school that I wanted to be a high school choir and band director. And that's just in part for having a really good personal experience with that. And I just wanted to be able to continue doing that without being in choir anymore. I come as a director. So that's what I studied. And I taught in Lutheran high schools for a few years before transitioning over to a church. And as part of a music major, you have to have, your primary instrument. And the one that I had already fallen in love with and playing was guitar, specifically classical guitar at that point. So that was, what I studied. And I actually did that through Eastern Michigan University because Concordia Ann Arbor was a pretty small college at the time.
Yeah.
All of my instruction and recitals and things came through Eastern Michigan, which was great because at Concordia, I was the classical guitarist. And at Eastern, I was one of many bigger fish in the sea. So it's good.
That's super cool. So I want to get back into that classical guitar training in a second, but let's rewind a little bit more. Ask the question that you want to ask every musician in the world. How did you get started on guitar from a young age, or was it a young age?
Yeah. So I did like the I'll call them the obligatory piano lessons, and I took viola lessons in elementary school orchestra, stuff like that. I always loved guitar music. I grew up listening to lots of classical guitar. My parents would always put on like John Williams or Andre Segovia playing Bach for dinner time. We were one of those people. And so I credit them a lot for like that understanding of both that classical music and a steady diet of Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles and the Stones. So it's pretty well rounded, but the guitar was just always something like really attractive to me. And I was just started off being a chord kid, learning to play songs by ear. I actually got involved in my worship group at my church. And at the time I was one of like 5 acoustic guitar players, because it was the 80s, right? There's a lot of acoustic guitars, all capoed at different frets. And I sat in there and I learned from those guys. They were all old guys. They were like 30, so they seemed really old to me at the time.
Ancient.
But I learned so much watching those guys. And about a year and a half after that, the music director came and sat a microphone in front of my guitar. And like I was just showing up and playing, and just for fun. And one day it's like, I shall give you a microphone. And I knew like, wow, I've arrived. So it's just that love of playing guitar, and then its connection with playing in church has been something that's been a part of my life since I was a teenager.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so one of the things I think is just interesting about your story and that I want to kind of shape into what you do now is, again, sounds like you had this upbringing where you listened to a lot of classical music at home. You were also a part of a group at a young age where you got to play, with a bunch of acoustic guitars, kind of your more sort of oral learning, strumming away with a bunch of folks. And then you went to university and you got this classical education. And so it's really interesting to me that and you had a real passion for classical guitar. And so I'm assuming you read really, really well, or did, or still do.
Yeah, still can. Yeah.
Yeah. So you read in that read music classically, and yet I would imagine on most Sundays you are leading the band and strumming away like you did when you were younger. And I'm curious how your brain sort of processes when you took over that job in contemporary music. What was your attitude towards classical training versus strumming with a band? Yeah.
Well, my strumming has gotten a lot better over the years, and that's a good thing because I wasn't all that great when I started.
Yeah.
The classical background, it taught me how to learn to play music. There's one thing to just develop a skill, but to develop the skills to learn, right? The practicing skills and how you go about stuff. That was a huge part of studying classical guitar and in college learning music theory and stuff. So a lot of that applies to, everything that I do. I've stuck with the acoustic guitar because I think for me, it's a really utility Swiss knife instrument to lead with.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of like our worship team, all the instruments, you could look at them like an orchestra, right? You've got your strings and your brass, although I don't always have strings and brass, but I have a bass and drums and keys and electric guitars and stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, an acoustic guitar is a bit like having my conductor baton. I can effortlessly, without having to give any mental capacity much to what I'm doing, be a very good listener and assess in real time. And I'm able to communicate with really easily for me with an acoustic guitar. With just 2 measures of a groove, I can let a bass player and a drummer instantly know what I'm looking for. If they're good professional players. And I learned that from working with a really good drummer years ago, who basically taught me like, hey, when you do this, I do this. Oh,
right.
Okay. Oh, so I get this now. So I started to really put a higher value on the art of being a really good rhythm guitarist, because you can really tell that I can tell the difference when I hear someone just sort of strumming along and every note rings out versus someone that can like create a vibe, right?
Yeah. So,
not having to put a lot of effort into doing complicated stuff is a real value in my role as the guy who's trying to piece all of it together. So once in a while, like if I play electric guitar in church, I try and do that when I'm not singing. And in rehearsal, I don't play it. Like I just have to listen, because if you're turning off pedals and you're thinking about this position and whatever, it's like that takes like a level of focus. And it's kind of like me on the piano. I can play it, but it's I have to work hard. I have to practice like tons to get to the point where I'm not thinking about it. So that's why for me, like I love the acoustic guitar, and I can turn around and I can kind of raise it, or I can start strumming to, we're going to crescendo now. So I feel like there's a lot you can do with it, maybe more so than other instruments. Like if I'm playing a bass, I'm like, I don't know how to always communicate with the band what I want, but I can. I
love that.
Guitar.
So you kind of see an acoustic guitar as almost like just a way to conduct the band, which is really cool. Yeah. I love that. So going back, just one thing you said a little bit earlier is that you've learned to be better at strumming the guitar. And I think it's so interesting to me because, again, a lot of folks, whether somebody's learning to play guitar for worship band or has been for a little bit, or and maybe doesn't understand what getting better at strumming looks like, or someone who doesn't maybe love contemporary worship and sort of sees the acoustic guitar as being sort of a simple instrument. When you had this classical education and then you sit here and tell us, I've gotten better at strumming, that probably seems backwards to a lot of folks. So just go into us a little bit when you say like, I've learned to be better at rhythm and strumming guitar. Like, what do you mean?
I think it's partially doing a lot of listening and learning other musicians. So, like a guitar by itself can only be so interesting, compared to maybe the variety of tones you can get. The notes fade away almost immediately. The dynamics are like this compared to other instruments.
Yeah.
But like you guys are both guitarists, so you can appreciate, like I saw like 4 years ago, I saw John Mayer doing a tour where he played the whole show with him and his acoustic guitar. Yeah. And that takes a level of mad skill to be interesting for 2 hours with nothing but an acoustic guitar. So that's an example of like, when you hear some musicians like that play, you realize the nuance of what they're doing is there's a lot of complicated things that are happening. And maybe when I'm going to rewind a little bit on something I said about not having to think about it.
Yeah.
I don't have to not think about it because it's simple. I don't think about it because it's something I've poured myself into so long.
Yeah.
So that now when I come to a Sunday, I'm not like, how do I play this song? Well, I've got a lot of tricks in the bag at this point to call upon. So there is a lot of there's a lot of learning that can be done, and you can really, you hear it. And in guitarists, you can tell when they do it. And I think playing solo gigs, if I'm playing at a restaurant and I've got my looper pedal and my delay, I can certainly do some more stuff. But, I also like to think on a Sunday morning, if everybody had the flu and I'm the only one there, can I take my acoustic guitar in the front of the room and with my voice and get it done, you know? And so I like to try and think about my playing in that way. And then when I add other instruments to in a band scenario, you know, that's when I start to back out, because I know I don't have to carry the whole thing all the time. I kind of know where I fit in, but sometimes the best thing to do is once everything's rolling is like, all right, let's let them do their thing. So it's kind of like playing less sometimes, right?
For sure.
That's one of my favorite Brendan memories, actually. In the very early Wally days of the Worship Arts Leader Initiative Summit, we were in Texas a lot. I think the Texas days, we had these long days at a church, you know, doing some bigger production type experiences. And we're out the hotel, and if my memory serves me, there's a guitar around, and Brendan grabbed it. And there's a group of like 10 of us, I think, singing some songs together as you're strumming the guitar. Remember that, Brendan? Remember that moment?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, Jordaning was like, he just came over to me out of the blue and was like, hey, you want to lead us in a couple of songs? I'm like,
it was such a heartfelt moment, and that stuck in my memory. And that's right. You can take a guitar, you can get up front, and you could lead the singing, or you could use it to sort of lead the band that leads the singing. But it's that versatility in the instrument. And I wanted to follow up with something that you said earlier, if you don't mind. It was the idea that you have the skills to do a lot of different things on the guitar. Can you explain to us a little bit? I've seen some people struggle trying to play a hymn on the guitar. But I feel like the better you are at the guitar, it's really approachable. I guess for someone like you could accompany a hymn on guitar. What about that is hard, and why does having more skill allow you to approach it better?
Sure. That's a great question, and one I still work at sometimes with depending on the song. So I really love traditional hymns. I grew up singing that as a youth and all through college. I mean, I've been exposed to that, and there's so many great melodies and lyrics that I want to maintain. Some of what it requires is using some different techniques, like being a good finger picker, which is something as a classical guitarist comes natural to me, so that I can create something a little bit more arpeggiated versus just like, you know, some songs you can put a groove on, but other times you need to like kind of like really take in how that song would feel if it had that pacing of an organ or a piano, and then how to reproduce some of that on a guitar. It's always challenging. You know, that's one of my goals has been over the years, is just to write good arrangements of hymns in contemporary worship scenarios, and use the band and the ability to arrange to bring that to life. But, you know, for as many things as I can like effectively lead on an acoustic guitar, like we could sing Be Thou My Vision or Christ Be My Leader. And if I was doing that by myself, I think the scope of that song, I could easily do 3 verses with a variety of build, and it would feel just perfectly at home. Nice Irish melody. But I get a song like Lift High the Cross, and not for lack of trying, I just can't find a way to make that song sound any good. For sure not with an acoustic guitar, but not even really with a band, unless I had like 4 keyboard players, because there's like this level of sustain and power and majesty that it's just not designed to do, you know? So part of it is also for me recognizing with different songs, like how far can I take this song as a solo thing with an acoustic guitar and be creative about it? And then how far can I take it by adding other things to it? And then once in a while, there's that Lift High the Cross. You're just like, you take care of it on the organs. I mean, if someone's going to share with me a chart for a band of Lift High the Cross, I'm happy to learn everything you came up with.
I think it's a great understanding. And like, not every hymn is works in that you don't have to force it. But if you have a proper amount of skill on the acoustic guitar, you can do a lot of great hymns that way. But I love that perspective. Okay, one kind of practical question as a leader. As I know you've been doing this a long time, I would gather you have a good chunk of volunteers coming in to play guitar, electric or acoustic. Mm-hmm. Have you ever struggled to get those guitar players to understand how much skill and practice is involved in becoming excellent at the instrument?
Yeah, I should name names since this is going to be a live podcast, right? I mean, I think, yes, I've had the opportunity to mentor a lot of people. And the thing I've tried to impart, like as a, whenever I can, I love to get in a formal, like, guitar lessons relationship with a new player. If they're at that phase in life where they're like, yeah, I'd like to actually put a little extra effort into this to sharpen my skills. It's like, some of it is just teaching guitarists how to be stylistically appropriate for what you're looking for. I mean, I know a great guitarist who grew up on 70s rock, and, that doesn't always fit with what I'm trying to assemble for a worship service. So, yeah, it is challenging sometimes. I feel like over the years when I've worked with people that I've helped them, like, their skills to the best place for them. And an example, I've worked before with an electric guitar player that would not be considered like a tight rhythm player or a blazing lead player,
right?
But knows music, loves Jesus, loves worship. And we started at the beginning with, okay, man, your only job is when we get to the chorus, you're going to hit that G chord with the big distortion, and that's all you're going to do. That's you. You're that guy who, like, takes the thing to the next level, but it's not going to be complicated. It's just going to be appropriate and, like, effective for the song. So now over the years, he can do opening lead riffs now. You know what I mean? So there's been some development as a player, but just finding with someone who's new, like, how can I safely you hear me? Safely incorporate you into my band without ruining it. But you know what I'm saying? Like, to not make a person feel like inferior or like unprepared for what they're doing,
I feel like
but
you
also
could show them,
contribute positive to the sound.
Show them the orchestra videos. The guy played the cymbals in the back.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like he's waiting for his entrance.
Yeah, right.
But it's such a impactful moment. But, like, he's just waiting there holding those two cymbals ready to go.
Yeah.
That's you, right?
It's a valuable skill to know how to do. Patience as a musician. Like, you just wait. Now you do this thing.
Well, so that leads me kind of my last question for you, which kind of ties into all this. You've talked a lot about these sort of practical ways you've had to work with volunteers and even professionals at times, I'm sure. Again, as the acoustic guitar strumming leader, there's a lot more going on than people may realize, right? And so how important has it been to develop your skills as a music director or as an MD, as you would kind of call it in a modern band setting, which is the same thing as music director? How's your MD muscle been exercised, and what have you learned just over the years on being a music director, how important that is to the job?
I mean, it took a little bit to learn when I transitioned from being a teacher to working in a church. I knew nothing, right? Kind of on the job training. I'll do a plug for Wally and what is happening with the Center for Worship Leadership, because that just did not exist in my sphere back in 2003. And I would have given anything to have gone to a conference or met all these other people who have a passion for the same things and want to talk about not just being a musician, but being a leader of people. So kudos to all of that work, because I had to kind of learn that by a lot of error and a lot of trials. But when I was a teacher, my next step was going to be to get a master's degree in conducting. I thought that would be just a great next step as a choral director. And once I started working in church, it just occurred to me that the main muscle I use is not my conducting. I have to know how to do it, and I have to be good at it. But I have to be better at, like, reading people and understanding where they are. Not just as musicians, but just as humans, and to navigate a room of artists, which is, you guys probably know that deal, right? Like, you have to help people work together, and just the ministry side of it. So I feel like a lot of my job is being this person who is developing people to do a thing. And the actual musician part of it, compared to, like, say you're the organist at the country church and there's no choir. So all you do is I'm going
Right.
to play. So I'm going to practice all day and I'm going to play it the best I can be. And that's the job, right? You come in, you play, you do your thing. In the sense, I have a lot of skill on what I do, but I'm not like deep diving into further practicing outside of my own personal enjoyment, right? The real skill at this particular church and with this group of people is being a people leader, a ministry leader.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Valuable.
Well, I love ending on that, Brendan. We're so glad to have you on this podcast. And you mentioned Wally, and we should say this: the next Wally Summit, September 15th of this year, 2026, is at Brendan's church, Concordia Lutheran Church in Kirkwood, Missouri. So Brendan it's coming full circle now.
I know,
20
right?
years
That's
later,
great. Yeah.
Wally helped you along the way, and now you're helping us. You're hosting the conference, so we are super thrilled to be coming your way in September. Everybody, thanks for listening again today. We're thankful to Brendan for his time, and we hope you learned a little bit about guitar and how it works in contemporary music, and how important it is to develop a skill like playing and also a skill like people leadership. We will see you next time on the Lutheran Worship Podcast.
Thanks, guys.